The Zarkalians had ruled the Orion arm of the galaxy for nearly 1,000 years. Their empire stretched across thousands of star systems. Their fleets patrolled every known hyperspace lane, and their warriors had crushed any species that dared to resist their rule. They had fought wars against insectoid hive minds, battled silicon-based war machines, and even wiped out an entire race of sentient gas clouds. And yet, through all their conquests, they had never once known fear. That changed when the human warship arrived. It was not a fleet, not an armada, not even a battle group. It was one ship, one lone vessel that emerged from the darkness of space, its hull black as the void itself. It bore no markings of an empire, no insignia of a ruling council. It carried only a single name in a language most of the galaxy could not read: vengeance. The Zarkalians laughed when they first saw it. They had seen countless primitive species try to resist them before, and they had crushed them all with ease. But something about this ship was different. It did not run, it did not broadcast surrender, and it did not beg for mercy. It simply waited. The Zarkalian admiral, Kylos Var, watched from the bridge of his command, Dreadnought, the Imperium's wrath. He was a veteran of 100 campaigns, a warrior who had seen entire planets burn. He found it almost amusing that this lone ship thought it could stand against the might of the Zarkalian Empire. "Send a warning shot," he ordered lazily. A pulse of plasma fire streaked across the void, a brilliant arc of destruction meant to scare the foolish humans into submission. It missed the Vengeance by mere kilometers, but the ship did not so much as flinch. Then, without warning, it moved. The ship accelerated faster than any vessel the Zarkalians had ever seen. It did not follow known flight patterns, did not adhere to the predictable physics of space combat. It zigzagged through the void, twisting and turning with impossible agility. The Dreadnought's tracking systems struggled to lock on, its gunners cursing in frustration. "Impossible," Var muttered under his breath, and then the Vengeance opened fire. There was no energy buildup, no slow charging of weapons, no visible torpedoes or plasma bolts. One moment the Zarkalian fleet was whole, and the next, half of it was gone. Ships shattered like glass, their hulls torn apart by unseen forces. Explosions rippled through the void, and the admiral could hear the panicked screams of his officers as the destruction unfolded. This isn't possible," one of his sub-commanders shouted. It wasn't just the raw firepower that terrified them. It was the precision. The human warship did not fire blindly, did not unleash chaotic devastation. Every shot was surgical, every blast targeted. It was as if the ship knew exactly where to hit, exactly how to cripple their most powerful vessels. The Zarkalians had fought hundreds of wars. They had faced foes with superior numbers, advanced technology, and deadly weapons. But never before had they faced an enemy who did not fight with rage or desperation. The humans fought like predators. Cold, calculated, efficient. Var clenched his mandibles. "Open a channel! Demand their surrender!" But before his transmission could even go through, the Vengeance spoke first. A single message, broadcast across all frequencies. "We are here for justice. Surrender now or be erased." And for the first time in 1,000 years, the Zarkalian Empire felt fear. Admiral Kylos Var's mandibles clicked anxiously. Fear was an emotion unfamiliar to him, unwelcome in his mind, yet it slithered through his chest like a parasite. The human warship hung in the void, motionless once more, as if waiting, no, daring them to make a move. How is this possible?" one of his bridge officers stammered, his scaled hands trembling over his console. "One ship? Against an entire fleet?" Var snarled. "It's a trick. Some kind of advanced weapon stolen from another race. The humans don't have this kind of power." He wasn't sure if he was trying to convince his crew or himself. The bridge was filled with chaos, officers shouting over one another, status reports flooding in. Half their fleet was destroyed in under a minute. Half. Entire battles had been fought and won with fewer casualties, and yet the human warship had not taken a single hit. Var slammed his fist against his command console. All remaining ships form a defensive line. Focus all weapons on that vessel. I don't care what it takes. Destroy it. The Zarkelian ships obeyed. Plasma cannons, disruptor torpedoes, ion lances, all of them turned their wrath toward the vengeance. The void lit up with the firepower of an empire, energy scorching across the blackness of space, converging upon the lone human warship. For a moment, Var allowed himself to believe it was over. Then the vengeance moved again. Not away, not to evade, forward. Straight through the storm of fire as if it were nothing. Weapons meant to tear through the hulls of dreadnoughts simply vanished upon impact. Shields that should have been overwhelmed held firm, shimmering with an eerie, almost unnatural glow. The ship cut through their fleet like a shadow in the dark, untouched, unscathed, unstoppable. The bridge of the Imperium's wrath erupted in horror. Officers shouted in disbelief. Some abandoned their stations, as if fleeing would save them. "Impossible!" Var roared, gripping the edges of his command chair. His mind raced. This had to be a trick, a deception, some kind of illusion. Then the human ship fired again. This time it did not simply destroy, it disassembled. A Zarkelian battlecruiser, the Vorlak's Pride, crumbled in an instant. Not an explosion, not a detonation. The ship unraveled, its armor peeling away, its weapons melting into dust, its crew vanishing as if they had never existed. Var's heart pounded in his chest. No known weapon in the galaxy could do this. Not even the most advanced doomsday devices had the power to erase a ship so cleanly, so effortlessly. "This is your last warning," the human voice echoed through the comms, cold and absolute. "Surrender." Var clenched his fists. The Zarkelian Empire had conquered thousands of worlds. They had razed civilizations, enslaved species, crushed rebellions without mercy. They had never surrendered. And yet, his eyes darted to the destruction outside. The human ship did not negotiate. It did not ask for peace. It did not waver. For the first time in his life, Admiral Kalos Var felt truly, completely powerless. And for the first time in the history of the Zarkelian Empire, a commander spoke the words his kind had never spoken before. "We surrender." A suffocating silence fell over the bridge of the Imperium's wrath. The words had left Admiral Kalos Var's mouth, but they felt foreign, unnatural. The Zarkelian Empire had never surrendered. Never. And yet, as the human warship Vengeance loomed before them, as his once mighty fleet lay in ruins, there was no other choice. His officers stared at him in shock, some with wide, disbelieving eyes, others with barely contained rage. A few even reached for their weapons, as if the very idea of surrender was more intolerable than death. Var ignored them. His pride, his honor, none of it mattered anymore. Survival did. A moment passed, then another. The Vengeance did not reply. The silence stretched so long that Var began to wonder if the humans had even heard his words. He opened his mandibles to speak again, to repeat the surrender, when the human ship finally responded. Acknowledged. One word, simple, unfeeling. A brief pulse of energy rippled from the Vengeance, washing over the remaining Zarkelian ships. Systems flickered, weapons shut down, shields powered off. A soft hum resonated through the bridge of the Imperium's wrath, like a great beast exhaling after a long hunt. The humans had disabled them. Var felt a strange mixture of relief and humiliation settle in his chest. They could have finished the job. They could have erased every last one of them from existence, just as they had done to the Vorlak's pride. Instead, they had accepted his surrender. He should have been grateful. So why did it feel like something far worse was coming? A new voice crackled over the comms. This time, it was not the cold, mechanical broadcast from before. It was something else. Something alive. "Admiral Kalos Var," the voice said, smooth and precise. A human voice, male, unhurried, yet carrying the weight of something ancient and deliberate. "You have fought well. But your empire is finished." Var swallowed thickly. "The Zarkelian Empire is vast. This is but one fleet." "No," the voice countered. "It was your best fleet, your strongest commanders, your most advanced warships." The human let the words settle before delivering the killing blow. "And we just destroyed them with one ship." Var felt his stomach churn. He knew it was true, but hearing the enemy say it, calmly, factually, made it undeniable. "You think your empire will recover?" the voice continued. "It will not. As we speak, your homeworld is being surrounded. Your supply lines are being severed. Your colonies are being burned." A chill ran through Var's bones. Impossible. No species could move that fast. "You misunderstand." A pause. "We have already been here." Var's breath hitched. His claws gripped the armrest of his chair. "You are only learning now what has already been decided." For the first time in his life, Admiral Kalos Var understood what it meant to lose. And the worst part? The humans weren't celebrating. They weren't gloating. They weren't demanding tribute or forcing the Zarkelians into servitude. They were simply ending them with cold, brutal efficiency, with the same terrifying precision they had wielded against his fleet. This was not conquest. This was eradication. The humans had arrived, and they were finishing the war the Zarkelians had started centuries ago. Admiral Kalos Var sat frozen in his command chair, the weight of the humans' words suffocating him. "We have already been here." That phrase gnawed at his mind like a parasite. It made no sense. If humanity had already struck, if they had already reached the heart of the Zarkelian Empire, why hadn't there been reports? Why hadn't there been cries for reinforcements, desperate pleas for aid? The homeworld, the throne world of the Grand Dominion, had the strongest defenses in the entire empire. And yet, the human spoke with absolute certainty. The bridge of the Imperium's wrath was silent. His crew stared at him, waiting for orders. He could see the silent battle in their eyes, the same question whispered through the air. What now? Var opened his mandibles to speak when the main view screen flickered to life. His blood turned to ice. The screen did not show the stars, nor the ruined wreckage of his once mighty fleet. Instead, it displayed Zarkelia Prime, the capital of their empire, the jewel of their dominion. And it was burning. The towering citadels of the High Caste were in ruins, great pillars of smoke rising into the atmosphere like funeral pyres. The defensive orbital stations were nothing more than twisted debris. The once bustling cities teeming with trillions of Zarkelians were eerily silent. It was a graveyard. Var's mandibles quivered. "No," he whispered, barely able to force the word out. "It is already over." The human's voice returned, unrelenting, undeniable. "This was not an invasion. This was not a war. This was justice." Var's claws dug into his chair. His heart pounded, his mind scrambling for something, anything, to explain what he was seeing. The humans had always been a minor species. They had been nothing. A fledgling race barely stepping into the stars. The Zarkelians had barely considered them worth the effort of subjugation. And yet, here they were. tearing down a 1,000-year empire as if it were nothing. The screen shifted, and Var felt his stomach drop further. The throne of the Grand Dominion, the Hall of Conquerors, the most sacred place in the entire empire, where the Supreme Autarch ruled over all. The hall was in ruins. The golden banners of Zarkalian supremacy were shredded, trampled in the dust. And in the center of the throne room, a single figure stood. A human, clad in black armor, the visor of their helmet reflecting the firelight. They held something in their hand. Var squinted. It was a severed head. The Supreme Autarch, the ruler of the Zarkalian Empire, dead. The human warrior raised the severed head high, turning it towards the cameras broadcasting across the empire. And then they dropped it. The head rolled down the shattered steps of the throne, bouncing like a discarded piece of garbage, a statement, a declaration. The Zarkalian Empire was no more. Var's claws trembled. How? His voice was barely above a whisper. How did you do this? How did you destroy an empire in a single strike? For the first time, the human on the comms let out a slow breath. The same way you did once. Var's breath hitched. We learned from you. The realization hit him like a plasma blast. The humans had been watching, studying, learning. All those years of Zarkalian conquests, all those brutal campaigns where they had crushed weaker species, torn apart civilizations without a second thought. The humans had seen it all. And when their time came, they had not fought with desperation. They had not fought with rage. They had fought like the Zarkalians had taught them, without mercy. Your people will not suffer as ours did, the human said, because there will be no one left to suffer. Var's breath caught in his throat. The screen flickered again. He saw Zarkalian warships plummeting from the skies, their burning wrecks crashing into the cities below. He saw entire military districts being wiped clean by orbital bombardments. He saw escape shuttles, desperately trying to flee, being obliterated one by one. We were weak once, the human continued. You made us strong. Now we make sure you never harm anyone again. A deep hum filled the bridge of the Imperium's wrath. The Vengeance was powering its weapons. Var realized in that moment that this was not surrender. This was execution. He slumped back in his chair, his mandibles parting slightly. There was no rage, no defiance, just cold, sinking acceptance. This was how it ended. The Zarkalian Empire had never feared war until the humans brought it to their doorstep. And now, there was nothing left.